This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Goal Boys Network. Here's your host, Will Hill.
Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Goal Boys. Coming up on the show, Thor Nystrom of Fantasy Life will join us, and we will go over the 4 college football playoff games. We've talked a little bit about them here and there, but we will do a deep dive. He is very good with the film aspect of it, really dives into the numbers. He makes his own numbers. He's very sharp at this, so excited to talk to Thor. Maybe we'll talk a little Vikings too, because he's a big Vikings fan, get his thoughts on Vikings Lions. But we'll do mostly college football, and I'll start here with the 4 games, and I'll just get into them, give you a pick on every game. We'll see here if the underdogs can be a little more lively. Boy, it'd be hard to be less lively than they were in round 1 when they all basically just got steamrolled and run out of the building. But this is a little different. We don't have any home field advantage, and like I said in round 1 and after round 1, the better teams are better, and the better teams are home. So that it probably added up and probably made sense that the favorites would roll as they did. But let's just get into it. Penn State and Boise State here. Penn State laying 11.5, total 53.5. I like the under. I think Penn State wins. Is it 28-14 or is it 28-21 and they cover? I'm indifferent on the spread. I lean towards taking the points, but I mean, you could talk me into Penn State. Hey, they take care of business against these lesser teams. They win the game by 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't be shocked. I do like the under, though. I think that if you look at Penn State's first game, they absolutely dominate 38-10, but they only had, they didn't have a 38-10 box score. They were really limited on yards and first downs. It was not like an overwhelming, dominating performance against SMU. And again, that's at home. That's against a team that was overwhelmed. And this is going to be a Boise team, which, look, maybe they don't have the same talent as Penn State. And I think the quarterback will limit them for Boise State. Maddox Madsen, he's just not that good. But I mean, you look back at the SMU game, Penn State had 325 yards of offense and 18 first downs. That's not like a dominating box score, and they just don't have a ton of explosiveness on offense. So I will go under here. I think Penn State wins, but I think the under is the way to play it. Texas, Arizona State. Arizona State's taking a little money. We're down to 12.5 here, where this line was 13.5, 14. I think I even touched near the opener. Again, it'd be a lean towards Arizona State. This is the game I have the least desire to bet. I can't lay 2 touchdowns with Ewers. He's so up and down. He's so hot and cold. And when you look for an underdog, can they run? And I know it's a bad matchup because it's hard to run on Texas, but I think the fact that Arizona State can probably get enough going on the ground, and to me, that's the game. Can you run the ball? Can you run the ball for 4 yards a clip and just get in 3rd and short, stay out of 3rd and long, and just keep the clock moving, keep the chains moving, and shorten this game? They are a very live dog to at least cover. I'm probably not going to win, but at least cover. If they can run the ball somewhat effectively, they have a chance to get absolutely destroyed. If they can't, and if it's just running into a brick wall and, no yards, 1 yard, that kind of thing, it's going to be a long day for them, and this game could get out of hand quickly. But I'll take Arizona State plus the 12.5. Don't feel great about it, but that will be my pick there. I think Texas probably wins, though, as the line suggests. And again, just a joke that these teams that lost the SEC title game and the Big Ten title game got such a better path than the teams that actually won the game, the Georgias and the Oregons. You're much better off being Penn State, being Texas, the loser of that game, where you're 2 touchdown or double-digit favorites in these games. Just ridiculous how this tournament was seeded, but we've gone over that enough. Oregon versus Ohio State is Wednesday, 5:00 Eastern. I like the over 55.5. If you look at the first meeting, I mean, both of these teams, I know Ohio State's offensive line was in better shape, and I think Oregon wins the game. I think just like people were overreacting a little bit to Ohio State, Michigan, which I think, I was probably guilty of too. People, react to the last thing you saw. I think maybe people are jumping a little too much on the Ohio State bandwagon here. And if you look at the first meeting, 32-31, both teams near 500 yards of offense. Oregon, 7.6 yards per play. Ohio State, 7 yards per play. So college football, good offense now beats good defense to me. Both the winners probably in the 30s here. I will go over 55.5, and I lean towards Oregon getting the 2.5. I think this is a game where, this is probably last team with the ball. That 2.5 could be valuable because you could see another, 35-34 type of game. So take Oregon, and I will take over 55.5. Then Notre Dame, Georgia. I know I'm guilty of this, and it's probably not the best way to handicap it. I can't get past the uniform with Notre Dame. I can't get past the years of just not competing when they get on the big stage, whether it's Alabama in the title game or Alabama in the playoffs. I think it was 2020. They just don't compete with these upper echelon teams. Now, maybe this is a better Notre Dame team. I think it is. I think it's definitely a better Notre Dame team. But I got Kirby Smart with time to prepare, and I've got just a much tougher schedule for Georgia. Georgia played the toughest schedule. They played Texas twice. They played Ole Miss. They played Alabama. They played, and none of those games were at home. They played Clemson. None of those games were at home, by the way. And they also played Tennessee at home. Meanwhile, Notre Dame, it's a lot of, Army and Navy and Louisville and USC. It is a major, major step up in competition. I think Kirby Smart, you're going to give him, a good, it's almost been damn near a month, 3 weeks since they played their last games. You're going to see his team improve. Now, they don't probably have, and this is not like I said with Notre Dame, this is not your typical Notre Dame team. This is not your typical Georgia team. If it was for both sides, this is a 2-touchdown spread. There's a reason this line's 1 or pick 'em or whatever. And it's Georgia laying 1. Georgia doesn't have like an NFL player at pass catcher. They lose Bowers to the pros. They lose Ladd McConkey to the pros. You're seeing how good those guys are on Sundays, and they just haven't replaced those guys. And they just don't have the the 5 stars they recruited just didn't work out. There's just not a lot comparatively to the talent they usually have. There's just not a ton of talent on this Georgia team. But I think coaching, schedule, trenches, it's almost like Notre Dame's trying to beat Georgia at Georgia's game. And I just think Georgia's doing the same thing Notre Dame is with better players. So I think it'll be close. I think it'll be low scoring, but I will go with Georgia. So under Penn State, Boise State, 53.5. I'll take Arizona State plus 12.5. I'll go over 55.5, Ohio State, Oregon, and I will take Georgia -1. Those are the picks for the college football playoff. Should be a lot of fun. Excited for it. Can't be any worse than the first round, let's face it. So we'll see what Thor Nystrom thinks. We'll get his thoughts on all these games. The Vikings Lions. That is next. This Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast, and I am excited to introduce our next guest, first-time guest. You can catch him at Fantasy Life. It is the great Thor Nystrom. He does a tremendous job, college football, the draft, NFL, and most importantly, he's a Vikings fan. So we will get to the Vikings Thor, but first off, what's going on, man? How's it going?
It's going well. The Vikings are 14-2. They are off a recent sweep of the hated rival Green Bay Packers. The world has been restored. The Gophers beat up on the Badgers too this year. So Minnesota supremacy reigns. And brother, it's good to be with you. It's about time we finally sat down and chopped it up. So good to be with you.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get to the Vikings, but let's start recording this before the college football games, before the college football playoff. I wanted to do a good breakdown of all 4 games. So I'll let you handle it. I'll let you start, and we'll just go in chronological order. Penn State's laying 11.5. The total's 53.5. I think after the first round, people that like to bet underdogs are going to have less of an appetite to take the points and root for Cinderella. I'm indifferent to the side here. I'd lean towards, I guess, the dog. I like the under more than anything. What say you?
I would be down with the under for reasons that I'll get into in a second, but my bet on this game is going to be taking those points. And to your point, I am an underdog better in general. You're going to get a taste of that in the next 20 minutes. Ran into a buzzsaw in that round 1, like you're sort of indicating. And treetop point on this, I'm curious how much of the dominance of the favorites in round 1 had to do with the fact that this is the first time that we've had the 12-team field with the round 1 games at the home site of the favorite. I was describing it on a show of like, you play the college football 25 game, and when you're on the other, you're on the road, they have like the stadium atmosphere meter. And like this past weekend with the round 1, or the weekend before with the round 1 games, that would be an all-time break, the stadium atmosphere meter. Like Indiana, you win 2 games last year, and now you're stepping onto the field on Friday night in South Bend, right? Like the first ever 12-team playoff game on the road. Like you're walking into a science fiction at that point. So I'm wondering how much of those 4 underdogs that affected them. This game, like I said, I like Boise State in this one. Boise State, where you beat them, it is by beating them down the field with your passing game, which is like the worst thing of the Penn State offense. That's where they find themselves susceptible to turning the ball over, which is why they've never done it more with Alar. Penn State wants to establish the ground game. Boise State, their best thing on defense, it's their front 7 and slowing the runs. And then I also think you look at the Penn State defense, there has been some holes on that run defense. It's a good run defense, but there are things to exploit there. And I think Genty is going to get his in this game. So I'm with you, man. I'm seeing more of a low scoring game. I'm seeing certainly a closer game. My line on this game is like something like Penn State -5, 5.5. I think this number is way too high. And I think Boise is legit. And the other thing is, for the strength of schedule folks out there, we already got a proof of concept one time on this account when Boise traveled to Eugene, Oregon, and gave the Ducks everything that they could handle, fell by 3 points. I think Oregon is better than Penn State is, and this game is on a neutral site. I think Boise State is going to be competitive in this game.
All right, how about the next game here? We have it is another big favorite here is Texas laying Arizona State. This is New Year's Day, and we are down to 12.5. So Arizona State's actually taking some money. I don't know if this ever touched 14.
It did at the beginning.
Yeah, I thought it might have, and that's
Yeah.
I think that was a trigger point for a lot of people to just take the points here because 14 is obviously a key number. Total 51. Same question. Do you see the dog hanging around? Do you give them any chance to actually win the game?
So right when it came out was on Arizona State. The 14, 13 up 13 would still, that's where I decidedly lean. Now we're getting closer to the margins. This is getting closer to where my line is. I think I have like Texas -10.5 or something, or 11 or whatever. And you've now crossed over the key numbers, like I said, so you're getting close to the margins there. I do think that there is a path for Arizona State, at least to, not get run off the field here. And with Texas, last year they had the dominant run defense. You could not run on Texas. They had the best run defense in the nation. They had Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy in the middle, and they lost some other guys from that front seven as well. And then in this offseason, Steve Sarkisian, the big priority was improving the secondary, improving the pass defense. They did so. Texas now is one of the 2-3 best pass defenses in America per play, but the run defense has fallen a bit. It's still good, but it is not elite. And the things like stuff rate, opportunity rate, success rate, there are some deficiencies there. Well, that's the thing that Arizona State's the best at. Arizona State has a good offensive line, and then Scadaboo is a broken tackle, Affidancio, right? Like, I mean, you're not getting him in the backfield. You're not going to get the penetration, and even if you do, you're not tackling him in the backfield because it's going to take like the third guy. It's like you have to pursue that guy. It's got to be waves of pursuit on Scadaboo to get him on the ground. I think that they're going to be able to get efficiency through that. Of course, I have concerns about the Arizona State passing game without Jordan Tyson. It's basically the reason that I tried without success to fade Arizona State in the last game that they played. So I mean, you have to say that. And again, now we're closer to the margins on this game. I would probably still lean Arizona State, but where the drop into the 12.5, that's where it takes it off like a play for me, more to a lean.
All right, and we'll get into the big ones here. Notre Dame is taking some money too. This one's been back and forth, but mostly Georgia laying a point here. Total 45, which is really low. What are you looking at in this game?
Yeah, I think this one was like 2.5 before 2 or something, Georgia. And I like Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is going to win this game. They can keep the points. So whatever it is, if they're still underdog, I just do the money line on it. The big thing here is Georgia doesn't have Carson back. It was a flawed offense even when they did, right? Like, following Georgia throughout the fall, their running game comes and goes. And if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt on that, what you would say is ETN was banged up for most of the year. I think he was suspended the first game, and then he was like banged up. Missed time, he'd be back, wouldn't be 100%. There'd be the games where it was Nate Frazier, the little true freshman that they have. And so there would be full games where they would just immediately divert to essentially full-blown air raid, like just throw. And that was more or less fine because you have Carson Beck, although Carson Beck went like 5-6 straight games throwing at least one interception. There was just so much stress on him in that offense. Now he's injured. So in this game here against Notre Dame, that has the awesome front seven, it's not that Georgia's running game is going to come and go. They're not going to have one. They already weren't running the ball on far lesser run defenses than Notre Dame's. And now the opponent is not going to be as concerned about the downfield passing as they were before. So because of this, now this Gunnar Stockton kid, all that pressure goes on to him. I don't know what we have seen or what tangible data there is that supports yeah, Gunnar Stockton through the air could beat Notre Dame in this game. Apples to apples. Whereas, like you're thinking about the paths for success for the Georgia offense, they're narrow, man. Like it's sort of dark looking down those different paths there. Whereas with Notre Dame, a couple clear ones, couple ones where if they didn't have success there, it would be stunning. And one of them, a big one, last week in the Indiana Notre Dame game. I only had one bet in that game. I couldn't get my finger on the side. What did it was like 8 or something. And I think it, the final score was 10, but like I just couldn't. I was like, eh. The one bet I had in that game was the under on Riley Leonard's rushing in the prop market. Something that had gone from like mid to high 30s at the open, and it had gotten steamed all the way up into the low 50s, which is where I got involved in fading the market that had pushed it there by going under. And the reason I did that was because Indiana, they have a good run defense, but they have also had throughout this season been really good against dual threat quarterbacks, taking away the legs. You look across all their different box scores, and it just seemed as though it was a priority of their defensive strategy of we're not going to get ripped by the quarterback's legs. So I'd gone under the 50 thing, and I felt pretty good right before the game. The sideline reporter goes up to Signetti and's like, you're going up against this offense. They run the ball well. They have the dual threat quarterback. Their offensive line is solid. Like, we're in South Bend right now. What is the priority for you heading into this game? And Signetti was like, I'll tell you the priority. It's taking away Riley Leonard's legs. That offense, when you watch their film, they really get going when Riley Leonard is also doing damage on the ground. Our first priority on defense is take away Riley Leonard's ability to break containment. So, oh boy, was I feeling good about being under on 52.5, 53.5, whatever it was. And that cashed. This time we're going the opposite way, and we will be going over on the Riley Leonard rushing. Georgia, again, I've had as many of us had, to watch many Georgia games this season. I've mentioned the offensive tendencies. I'll tell you one of the defensive ones. Every single effing time that they have faced a dual threat quarterback, they've been ripped by that dude's legs. Even down to guys you don't even think are dual threat quarterbacks. They were putting up some of their better rushing stats. I think an example of this is Brock Vandagriff against Georgia. One of my biggest prop bets of the season was going over on Peyton Thorne's rushing against Georgia. That got there. Jalen Milroe is still not done running in that game against Georgia. Put up 1 billion yards. There's 3 or 4 other guys, legit dual threats that put up numbers on Georgia. I'm not going to be able to go down the entire list, remember all of them. Whole point being, Georgia badly struggles with this. Riley Leonard is going to get his ground yards because it's not just that the opponent struggles with it. It's that that team, their coaching, the offensive staff, they know the tendencies. They've been watching the film. They know the data. That is something that's going to be more leverage. Because in the Indiana game, you could see it wasn't just the priority from the Indiana defense. It was also Notre Dame. They were not running the design runs. It was a percentage of what they usually do with Leonard. And I think that was a nod towards that strength of that Indiana defense. This one, that is one of the primary weaknesses of the Georgia defense is keeping containment on dual threat quarterbacks. So you can expect Riley Leonard to go off on the ground in this game. And I think Love is going to have success on the ground as well. And I think the efficiency is going to be there for Notre Dame, where they don't need to get too far over their skis with the passing game, stretch Leonard beyond his means. I like Notre Dame to win that game.
All right, in the final one, Oregon, Ohio State, rematch of the regular season. Oregon won 32-31. If you look at the box score, man, both offenses really did whatever they wanted. I would look towards an over 55. There's some 55s, there's some 55.5s. I would expect it to be similar to the first game. Close game, kind of a toss-up game, high-scoring game. So I like the over more than anything. Do you have a strong opinion, strong conviction on this game either way?
I would probably lean the direction of the over if I was going to hit the total. I mean, we've seen in the first game, both the offenses had passes success, and I would guess that will be the case again. So yeah, I would expect that we would see points. In the first game, I took Oregon. Oregon was my preseason title pick. I will be taking Oregon again here. My system has this line flipped. Essentially, the exact is it 2.5, Will, in the market right now?
Yep, Ohio State favored by 2.5.
My number on this, it's something like Oregon minus 2.6 or like something like that. Just totally flipped. And I agree with that. I think Oregon is the better team. But where the offenses have the path to success, Oregon's pass defense is really good. Their run defense not nearly as good. They're just middle of the road in the FBS, like on a per play basis against the run. And Ohio State has that offensive line that I continue to be squeamish about. They had a great showing against Tennessee, and a part of that, I'm going to, you have to tip your hat to the kids. I'll tip my hat to Donovan Jackson, the converted left guard who had to kick out to left tackle because Josh Simmons, the stud left tackle, got injured for the season in the first game against Oregon, which shut about this odyssey. Switched the guard out to tackle. Then the next week in practice, McLaughlin, their starting center, he gets knocked out for the year. So they had to shift one of their other starting, the right guard. He has to go to center. He was a center last year, but he's been playing guard this year. And you bring in another backup guard off the bench. So you have a right tackle. He's the one that's still in place. And to his left, it is 4 guards. And they played better against Tennessee. Like I said, Jackson only gave up 1 pressure against James Pierce in that game. Impressive. Chip Kelly went against Tennessee and was throwing right out the gate, as opposed to what they did against Michigan, to just futilely run into an awesome front seven behind a bad offensive line. This game, you have a front seven that is not nearly as good as Tennessee's, but a pass defense that is way, 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 way better. So the interesting matchup will be that Ohio State run game against that Oregon mediocre front seven. Can they get a push there? Can Junkins and Henderson get going? Because if they don't, that sort of reverse Uno card that Chip Kelly pulled out in this game of like, okay, we know we're not gonna be able to run the ball well. We'll just throw, because Tennessee, they cheat everyone up into the box. They don't have good cornerbacks as is. We know we're going to get the one-on-ones all game long down the field, and we have the best receiving core in America. So game on. We'll just chuck it up. That's not going to be available to you here. So that interesting part of the handicap. And then on the other side, Oregon, they have the really well-rounded offense. Ohio State, their defense has been great. We saw in the last game, and this is something I'll be very curious about, and the key for on this side of when Oregon has the ball is, can Oregon's receivers once again beat Ohio State's cornerbacks down the field? Ohio State's cornerbacks, I go back and forth with them. They're both guys that will be drafted in April, and I have no idea where I'm going to rank either of them, because it's like, one game they're good. The next game you're seeing them getting singed all over the place. The next game they're shutting people down. The next game they're getting singed again down the field. And the Oregon game would be an example where when those guys were in one-on-one coverage, they were getting singed down the field. Burke and Igbinosun, the other kid, whatever his name is. So will Ohio State, are they gonna, are you going to keep more guys back so you can always give those guys help over the top? You could certainly do that, but Oregon has a really good offensive line. They have a really good ground game. So you're going to be giving them a free 4 yards a pop or so if you always keep back the 2 deep safeties to do that. So each guy gets help on their side. Fascinated about that. But again, you go back to the overall thing. I have less concerns about Oregon than I do Ohio State. I think Oregon is the more well-rounded team. And frankly, I like Oregon's coaching staff more. I know it's younger, but I like that coaching staff more. I like the play callers on both sides a little bit more. I'm going to go with the Ducks in that one.
All right. Who holds up the trophy at the end? Who's our champion?
I think I'm going to stick with Oregon. Last year, my preseason one was Michigan. I stuck with them throughout, and that doesn't happen every year, but it did last year, and we're going to cross our fingers again. The other team, though, that I would toss out, this is like 2-3 days before round 1 of that week. I put in a 10-1 ticket on Notre Dame to win the title. And that was a nod both to, I think this team is a little bit better than like the public and the market. It's like the stink from the NIU game. People couldn't get over it. I'll tell you this story. What was it, the Sunday or the Monday, like right after Notre Dame lost to NIU, I think it was plus 310 on Notre Dame to make the playoff. It was some crazy aberration of a line, right? Because at that time they were like 2-1 or whatever. You looked at their next 9 games, it's like, all right, like, it's hard for me not to see them winning at least 8 of these 9, if not 9 of the 9. And obviously they won 9 of the 9. But I think it's been hard for people to sort of get over that. I think that they, in a year that is wide open, I think that they have what it takes to get all the way through. And then the other part of my bet, was simply a nod at the advantageous path that they had been given. They got Indiana in round one. I think Indiana in another scenario might have acquitted itself maybe a little bit better, but it's like the very first game on that Friday night, it's your in-state, the big brother,
Bad
whatever.
angle on the safety, bad angle on the 98-yard run. Other than that, I mean, I know Notre Dame scored the next drive, but it wasn't like they just marched the ball up and down the field. And Signetti, I killed him. He coached a terrible game. He talked all that shit before the game, and he, punted from the plus 38, punted down 17.
There was some,
and then they made a late rally. Then they had a late flurry. It's like, oh man, I wish we kind of didn't give up on the game as soon as we did.
1000%. And it's, they say it's a game of inches. You wouldn't think a game of inches with a 98-yarder, but slightly missed angled there, missed tackle, it leads.
And Rourke wasn't good either. Rourke didn't play well.
Rourke was not good. And the defensive, first of all, this speaks to Notre Dame's elite pass defense, which is crazy because they lost. I'm trying to think through it because I don't want to be like exact, but maybe the nation's best cover corner for the season back in early October when Morrison went down, or late September, I forget. But they lost this mega stud, and they're still awesome. Like in the last game, that true freshman they have on one side just totally erased one side. I'm forgetting the kid's name. But he came off like an NFL conveyor belt. It's like he was built in a lab, but it was like 7 targets on his side of the field, 1 catch for like 6 yards. But whole point being, they have that elite pass defense. You have the elite ground game. You have a good offensive line, and hat tip to them there as well, because they had lost 2 really good offensive linemen for the season in camp. And this was a team that lost Joe Alt and the other kid in round 2, Blake Fisher, the right tackle. They still have a really good offensive line. And by the way, Jeremiah Love, I've said this on Twitter. I don't think this, some people are, oh, this is a hot take. This is just what I feel, is that Jeremiah Love is the Genty of the next class. That kid is. They're not the exact same player, but he will be RB1 in the next class. And that kid is ludicrous. Genty does stuff you don't see. Love does it in a different way. And I just get such a kick out of Love, because the thing he does that is peculiar or different from other running backs is he does the hopping over guys he's like Frogger, this guy. Like, it's like he can't get through a run if there's any room at all for him to maneuver without catapulting someone. And everyone's always trying to go at his knees. It's smart. I would go at his knees. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to tangle with him in the upper body to see who's stronger there. I would try to take out his knees too. He starts levitating. I wonder how much the NFL will let him continue to do that, because even the last game, we saw one of the times he does his pogo stick routine. Well, someone blasts him when he's in the air. And he seems to be having fun with this. It's like, when your buddy tackles you into a swimming pool or something, like he gets up like with a smile on his face. But, that whole thing. But whole point being, I think they have what it takes. You've already seen that advantageous pass start to open up. They beat Indiana the first one. Now you get Georgia without their starting quarterback, a Georgia team that is, again, in my opinion, more flawed than the public thought. Even before the Beck injury, I think they are seriously flawed now. Then we're in the Final Four. Defense travels, run game travels. Notre Dame at those 2 things, about the best we got.
All right, let's get to it. Vikings, Lions for all the marbles, the North, the 1 seed, everything. How does this go? How does this journey end? Where does this journey end for the Vikings? Are we going to get our hearts broken once again, or is this going to be, I don't want to say I'd settle for a loss in the Super Bowl, but I would just like to see them in the Super Bowl. How do you think this goes here this week and coming up?
Well, I know this is a safe space, with another Vikings fan, so I can actually tell you the real thing here, as opposed to sort of the lipstick I put on a pig when I'm talking to the outsiders. And that's this. In my head now, I go into everyone like yeah, they'll lose this one, right? Like, oh, they'll lose to the Packers, or they'll lose to the Seahawks, or this
Seattle.
week.
I thought Seattle was going to get them a couple weeks
for sure
when they fell behind. It was a 10-point lead. It had all the markings.
Classic trap game. And then, it's a decent opponent. It's that has a good home field advantage. And then you could see them coming out lethargic, and they did. That game, and then of course this one, the pass, it shows how good this team is. They did not have their fastball in Seattle, and they beat a quality team there. Then of course, what we just saw on Sunday against the Packers, the line, it's interesting. Like the national media keeps sleeping on the Vikings. The Vikings are better than national media thinks, but as a local that follows this team real close, that my scars are, for my entire life are, they're all over me with regards to how I see this, 98, was it 2008 or
2009,
2009?
Blair Walsh.
Yeah, like, I mean, we could just go, through the years with it, but it's like, it's always the nut kick. And this year, everything has been surprising. So I just expect this to end in the most painful way possible. But that being said, I guess the other point, I mean, that's more the capricious fan side of me, the more person that does this job. I would tell people out there, the Vikings are better than has been forwarded to you, because the national media has treated them sort of like a cute story all year. And it's, oh yeah, they win all their 1-score games, and yeah, Sam is overachieving, and yada yada yada. And I just haven't got, maybe today I haven't looked at anything today. Maybe they're starting to give the Vikings their flowers and treat them seriously. But I had noticed that up till this point. It's a team that they can run the ball and passing the ball. It's weapons everywhere. It's a pick your poison thing, and that's something you've seen with the Packer game too. We'd had early on the season the Justin Jefferson games where he was going ballistic. Then there was like the 2 or 3 weeks where it was like the free 3 campaign, and the people that didn't realize that he had been saying that going back to Pitt, that's his jersey number, that he had been saying that go back to Pitt. It's like his rallying cry. They were like, oh, Jordan Addison, he wants out, because he's not getting enough targets. Well, then, coincidence or not, a whole bunch of targets started going to Jordan Addison, and now he's been awesome. The Packer game, it's because I'm sure people out there that don't watch the Vikings are like, well, what if a team just takes away those 2 options? And I know from the past Sam has been bad going through progression. Why don't someone just try it? Just try rolling all the coverage resource that guy, and then make Sam beat you by going down the progression line. He did that against the Packers. He lit the Packers up with Jalen Nailor and TJ Hawkinson, some dump offs to the backs, but didn't need the other 2 receivers quite as much as in some of these other games, because the Packers were obviously without Jair Alexander, were shading more coverage that way. And so the middle of the field opened wide open. The Packers did not want the new cornerbacks in the starting lineup to not have the help over the top. And so that's what they did. They had the 2 deep safeties the entire game, played those guys back, gave some cushion off the line. TJ Hawkinson had plenty all day long. He was just frolicking around the intermediate part of the field. All right, Sam, you ready to toss me the ball? They got another bum linebacker on me or whatever, the bum strong safety, whatever it was. And they get Hawkinson the ball. And then the Nailor thing, you could see, like, it wasn't like Nailor was like, off the line, was like breaking people's ankles and, deking them out of their pants along his route path. But that kid, he knows what he's doing, and he's fast, right? Like, he's athletic. He can get to his spot, been in the system for a couple years now. And in this game, his big plays, just watch the all 22 in slow motion. Every single time they lose track of him or they give him extra spacing because of what the plan was with, in particular, Jefferson, but a couple times that happened with Addison too. The big touchdown in the back of the end zone towards the left that Sam threw to him, that was, what was it, 30 yards or whatever, like into the back of the end zone, 25 or whatever it was. What happened, and I was annoyed in the moment, because watching the broadcast angle, you couldn't tell how Jalen had gotten that free in the back of the end zone. And then they showed one replay before going to commercial. It was a different angle, but it wasn't the all 22. You still couldn't see the safeties while the thing was going. We finally got those looks. And what had happened was, on the one side, the dude was coming down with Addison in mind on the other side of the field. And then the side of the field where Nailor ends up going. So that's how Nailor gets the start of the separation, is because he sort of gets sloughed off in the zone. And then the deep safety on that side, he coming up because he sees Addison. So Nailor is now running back, and now Sam sees him, like, right. The deep safety on that side of the field that should have been back there, so Sam would not have been able to throw that. Guess where he went? Justin Jefferson's route ended, 15 yards before that. He was collapsing on Justin Jefferson. The game plan for the Packers coach, it was telling them safeties, those 2 guys, eyes, boots on the ground. Like, don't let those guys go off. Don't let them get past you, whatever you do. And that allowed some of these other guys to go. And this really is a long way up to make the point of the thing that, in particular yesterday, that showed its face, that has been impressive about Sam, and is almost getting more so as we go, because I thought yesterday was the best example of this. I know I've watched more Sam Darnold football than, most people outside of his immediate family and the coaching staffs that he's been on. Obviously going back to the USC days, the 2 years he started there, got to go to Pullman, Washington, his last season there, when they had a Thursday night game. They got upset by Wazoo that day. His issues that we saw his initial years in the NFL is what cropped its head that day in Pullman, which is if Sam gets okay, I'll start it the other way. When the look is there, like as called, he looks like the best quarterback in the NFL because he has the size, he has the athleticism, and he's got that zoom that the ball he's one of them guys. We only get like 7 of them in the NFL at any given time where the ball just comes out and you're like, holy, what? Like it looks like a camera trick. It comes out so fast. Sam got one of them arms. So when the look is there, he putting it on your hands. It's going to be there on time on the hands. When it's not there, and then he has to start going across the progressions because the look confused him, that's where he always got into the trouble because it was slow, right? It's like, okay, where am I going? Okay, that guy. Oh no, there's someone there. Okay, wait, who's the next one? And he would get caught in the progression game. And then all of a sudden, the ticker would go off in his head, or someone would just be in his kitchen to be like, oh, I got to do something. I got to do something. This is where you would see the throws of Sam in college and then early in his NFL career, where he'd throw it right into the chest plate of a linebacker, where no one was around. It's like, bro, what did you see there? Right? Because he would just panic. And then sometimes he would also eschew his mechanics in these moments. The thing that has gotten better with him and Kevin O'Connell, this is the reason to me why Kevin O'Connell is the highest paid coach that we have in the NFL right now is $20 million per year. That's Andy Reid. In my opinion, Kevin O'Connell's actual real life worth. I'm not talking about the precedent of coaching salaries now. If you went into the data and tried to unspool Kevin O'Connell's value to his team, he is worth minimum 10 years, $250 million. And I think that would be a steal for the Vikings. That guy is worth plenty more than $25 million per season, seeing as though he turned a $10 million 1-year guy this year in Sam Darnold through these very specific things that they've been working on. In Sam Darnold's season this year, they have like the baseball does this better where they're like, oh, the way he's playing this year, he was worth X amount on the field. I don't know that we have something like that in football, but I'm guessing if there was a metric, I'm guessing it would say something like Sam's been worth $55 million this year. The $45 million surplus there, plus you're going to get draft compensation for him if he leaves. It's going to be one of the great ROI signings ever. Sam, of course, he always had that dormant ability in him. It's the dude that can pull it out of him. So Kevin O'Connell this year has probably been worth $60 million plus to the Vikings, like in actual on-field things and things leading to performance. The thing of the progressions and the this is the look here and this on this concept, this is where we're going. If you see that right away, then you know that it's here. And like Sam's just gotten really good at that through his work with O'Connell. So yeah, I mean, but you have to tip your cap to Sam, and hopefully if Sam doesn't indeed leave this offseason, he goes and signs the mega deal that he has richly earned this season, that whatever staff he goes to, he can carry this over, or hopefully it's to a team that has like a O'Connell-like guy. I think the perfect fit would be the Rams run a similar thing, but we'll have to see how it goes.
Thor, appreciate the time, man. Good luck with your plays, but more importantly, good luck with the Vikings. Let's go into Detroit. Let's get the 1 seed, and then let's get the Vikings. As great as the season's been, I don't know if they have to go on the road for 3 games, man. That's a tough task.
Bro, same page. Like I think and I've been saying this for months. Like this Score North show I do about the Vikings. About like my whole point has been, I didn't see them as legitimate Super Bowl contenders before because I said the only path I believe that they can reach the Super Bowl is having that bye. This is a good team. It's a very good team, and it is the best coached team, arguably on both sides of the ball in the NFL. They will out-scheme you. Every game you watch the Vikings this year, it's chess against checkers. And one really quick anecdote, this is going back to mid-September. I think there have only been 3 games played this year. I was talking to one of my buddies and colleagues in the NFL draft industry. And if I said his name, everyone out there would know who it is. But
Mel Kiper, of course.
The whole point, it wasn't Mel Kiper, but it was another big name. And the whole point being was this guy in the fall, he does a lot of film work with the NFL. And he was telling me, he gets all the film, and then that's like his Monday routine. It's like, get out of bed, and now I make my coffee. And then he's like down in the office, and it's like, what's the first game we put on? And then, it's like the quick clips, right? So you can knock out the game in like 15 minutes. You get the all 22. So this is mid-September. He goes, bro, I love my Monday mornings. I look forward to them because I get to see the other games I wasn't able to watch live. And he goes, each one, he said, today was the third straight time. He said, it's the Vikings. Because he goes, it's so fun to watch the chess game play out when you have that angle looking down, because it's literally like watching Bobby Fischer sit across from an elementary school kid playing on the chessboard, in New York City. It is another level. It is three-dimensional chess against checkers every single time, where it's like, oh my God, whoever is running the game board here, it's like you're playing against some guy that's like top 10 in the world in Madden, and you just got the game last week, and you're like, oh, I don't even know what he's doing. The spacing thing, like, it's like art, right? And so they have that as well. But the talent isn't quite there yet overall for the Vikings. That is a fair thing to say, I think. And some of this, there is to some degree, overachievement through we are going to out scheme you on every single play thing. That's my concern about this team going on the road, is the team that has now there's teams that have the trump cards on you in talent. You're in the enemy territory. And if you don't get that number 1 seed, you add to the gauntlet not only the road games, but it's one extra game. And this team that over and over and over again, they have risen to the challenge. Like, I don't want to say that, at some point they're going to run out of steam, where we just watched them yesterday have one of the better showings, certainly, that they have played since the beginning of September. And they're one of the 4 best teams in the NFL. But that, you see after that game, and this went viral. It was a very cool moment where Darnold walks into the locker and they're all waiting for him, right? Like, and he slaps someone's hand on his way in, and then he runs into the quagmire, and everyone's doing their water bottles. They bring them up and on their shoulders and their whatever. And it was a very cool moment. Everyone in Minnesota, we were like tearing up. It's like, we're finally good. We finally have a good quarterback. We have a good coach, etc. But the Packer fans, of course, were immediately, Packer fans who were crying about officiating, which was rich, after they've benefited from 30 years of, advantageous calls. They feel aggrieved on this offside thing. So they start out with this, and then this video comes out, and of course they were like, oh, look at how cute it is. They're celebrating their look at how they celebrate a regular season win. It was one of the only times in my life I'm looking at like Packer fans' opinions, and I'm like, I hate myself for thinking this way, but I actually agree with them on this. Like, it's just that emotional, you're always at the hilt. And again, they've risen up to all these things, and they pull off so many upsets and long season. If you get the home field advantage, you get to take that week off of what would be, of course, the exhalation of having just upset the Lions, right? At 3 points in the market, 2.5, whatever it is. You go and you win that game, you get the 1 seed, but now you get the full time to rest. You're going to be off the 2 weeks, whatever. Then everyone comes into the bank, and the bank is a big home field advantage. Like, it's a different thing in there. The different stuff they do with the atmosphere. Like, if anyone listening to this, if you've never been to the bank, just make a thing to go to the bank one time. It's really cool. The tailgating scene is pretty good. You go in there, it's got some of the best sight lines. They have the open windows, so the natural sunlight gets in. You can see the city. And then it gets real loud in there, which is something that the Vikings have been doing going back to the Metrodome. Some of it is piped in noise. It's not as bad as it was at the Metrodome, but that place gets rocking. And then all the fans are on top of you. You get this, they dim the lights, and all of a sudden the snow's coming down, and they have like the Galler horns going off. Like, that is a tough place to play. So totally different scenario. If they get the 1 seed, totally agree with you, Will. If they get the 2, or I'm sorry. If they lose this game and they fall down to the 5, which we should do something with this with the NFL. This is what they're talking about in college. Maybe we shouldn't have the 4 teams, the 4 conference winners get the bye, and then because we see the issue with it this year. The Vikings, or the loser of this game, whether it's the Vikings or the Lions, it's almost a tragedy that you're one of the 2, at worst, 3 best teams in the conference, and now you're going to fall down to a 5 seed. You have to play every game on the road. Seems kind of unfair, but this game. This game coming up here. This is your game. You need to win this game. If you win this game, it all of a sudden becomes plausible that you could run it out with just winning at home. You have the teams, and you've been playing great at home, and get to the Super Bowl. Totally agree with you there.
Thor Nystrom at Thorku on Twitter. Fantasy Life, appreciate it, man. We got to do this again soon. Appreciate the time. Happy New Year. Thanks for coming on.
Happy holidays. Thanks for having me on. Had a blast, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you to Thor Nystrom. Enjoyed talking to him. Happy New Year to everyone. Rate, review, subscribe. We will be back Friday. Talk to you then.